for one of them. And, listen, I think the linebacker position is also, strangely enough, a position of depth.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. When
Seriously, let that sink in. The Eagles have depth at the linebacker position, so much so that Howie might deal one of them.
That almost sounds like an oxymoron, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. 12:30, final half hour of the middle on a Tuesday. Cut down day, August 31st. Barrett Brooks, Harry Mays. And we join this last half hour with a good buddy of ours. You see him on Birds 365. You read him in the Eagles Maven, Sports Illustrated. Follow him on Twitter. Ed Kracz, welcome to the show, buddy. How you doing today?
Hey, good fellas. I'm putting together an application to send into ESPN for a team here. I need an offensive lineman and a quarterback. You guys interested?
There you go. Yeah. Right. What would you call the team? See, because they just obviously went, Bishop Sycamore. Yeah, that sounds good.
It sounds important.
About I don't know. I love B. Brooks's answer, Bishop Dogwood.
Yeah, that was from our stream. Jeff Bruder on our stream. Our stream is awesome. They come up with all kinds of great ideas.
They always answer questions for me all the time.
That's hilarious. I think something with a cardinal in it. Cardinal. I don't know. Mix it up a little.
That is an amazing story. All right. Now? Obviously, we had some breaking news here with regards to the Eagles today. Howie somehow is able to flip Matt Pryor for a pick swap to the Indianapolis Colts. What else are you hearing? What do you think is going to go down between now and 4 o'clock, maybe trade-wise?
Yeah, well, listen, they still have offensive linemen that can play in this league. There are 13 of them on the roster right now, and I don't see them keeping more than 10. And we can go through the names, but some of those spare parts, Andre Dillard, obviously, I'm not sure what the marketplace would be for him. Mm-hmm. I kind of speculated that maybe they should trade for N'Keal Harry, who's got a shoulder injury when the Patriots were here practicing. That would be a pretty decent trade, I think, to get rid of a first-round pick in Dillard, to get another first-round pick in Harry, who hasn't done much in New England. But, I don't see that happening. I think it'd be tough to move Dillard and get any kind of value. But, listen, they still have guys on that line that, I'm sure Howie's burning up the phone lines right now trying to find a match for one of them. And, listen, I think the linebacker position is also, strangely enough, a position of depth.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. When
Seriously, let that sink in. The Eagles have depth at the linebacker position, so much so that Howie might deal one of them.
That almost sounds like an oxymoron, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sean Bradley could be traded. One of their picks from last year, I think he was a sixth rounder from last year's class. Kind of an up and down preseason for Bradley, but somebody who's got good football instincts from Temple. But he could be also played for perhaps another pick. But what he did so far with getting rid of Matt Pryor, Pryor was probably going to get cut anyway.
Right.
And then you turn around and you get a sixth round pick, which you had traded 2 days ago for your backup quarterback in Gardner Minshew.
Yeah.
And you had a guy that you drafted in the sixth round in 2018 who played 27 games for you, and you turn around and you get a sixth round pick for him 3 years later. So, you have to give Howie Roseman kudos for that deal.
Unbelievable, man. But even still, you look at the safety position when they reactivated McLeod, and Epps and the kid from Clemson have been fighting it out, and at this point, him coming in, it gives you a little more depth. Maybe one of those guys are for the market too. A guy like Epps, who's played a lot last year, but now he's could become more of a commodity that they can move.
Yeah, great point. But listen, I know they activated McLeod and Landon Dickerson from the NFI list, but the other option was to put them on the PUP list. And if you go on that physically unable to perform list, then you have to miss 6 games, or it might even be 7 games once the season starts. McLeod and Dickerson are both close, but I could see a scenario where, they're on the 53, but maybe they get put on IR anyway, because these new NFL rules, you can put guys on short-term IR and let them kind of get better and rehab for another 3 weeks before you can activate them. And you can bring back as many guys off IR this year as you want. There used to be a limit on those too. So even though they were activated off that PUP list, it doesn't mean that they're kind of out of the woods and they're going to be ready to go week 1. McLeod didn't do anything other than just individual drills yesterday. Same thing with Dickerson. So, these guys are going to play, but I'm not sure it's going to be week 1. And if that's the case, then you really do have to make sure, Marcus Epps is probably still here. Kayvon Wallace, but who knows? Maybe McLeod, he's got another week and a half to heal that ACL that he tore. Same with Dickerson. So if the Eagles are comfortable that maybe they'll be ready week 1, then sure, you could probably see a deal where maybe Epps is involved or Wallace, or I even like Elijah Riley back there. I thought Elijah Riley had a really nice camp at safety, and I think him and Andrew Adams are kind of in a battle to make this roster.
Ed Kracz from SportsIllustrated.com, SI.com, Eagles Maven. Follow him on Twitter at Kracz, Kratze, on Twitter. It's a must follow for all Eagles stuff. All right, Ed, let's say Dickerson. I'm kind of, obsessed with him at this point, as you can see by my backdrop. any guy that can pull off that kind of a look is good in my book. But once he is fully healthy and ready to go, where do you see him fitting in? Like, what do you think the ideal position is for him on this line, given the fact that he has such versatility?
Well, the Eagles seem to think it's at center, and I've talked to some people, and Barrett, maybe you can chime in on this, that initially he probably would be better off at guard because it's less of a tear and a wear on the knees than the center position, where you're kind of in the middle of everything and you're getting action from both sides. So, as far as keeping the knee healthy initially, the guard might be his best spot, but I think the Eagles are intent on playing him at center, and he's going to be back up to Jason Kelsey and ready to step in whenever Jason calls it a career, which who knows when that'll be. Jason's still playing at a high level, obviously, and he's made 105 straight starts coming into the season. But Dickerson's going to be there. But listen, I think that's where they want him, but I wouldn't just completely discount guard either. I mean, I would try to cross-train him and get him reps at guard because it's easier on the knees, is what I've been told, and because I think that there might be more of a need for a guard sooner than a center.
You're right about that, especially what's been going on with Brooks. And, Sayamalu had a great deal of his camp that he wasn't healthy with a hamstring pull.
Right.
But the position I've been really, really looking at, is the wide receiver position. And, whether they keep 5, whether they keep 6, there's still some guys that are on this roster that potentially could be some good players, but potentially they've been average players, a guy like J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. I mean, at this point, did you see anybody jump out at you this training camp, or maybe, in the preseason games, that you see sticking around besides the 3 or 4 guys that, will get most of the bulk of playing time?
Yeah, the 4 guys, obviously Smith, Rager, Watkins, and Greg Ward, I think, are secure. Now, are they going to keep 5 or 6? Arcega-Whiteside's interesting. He had the good game against the Jets, but it just seems like every year he has a great summer camp, really stands out, and then when the lights go on in the regular season, he kind of disappears. Now, whether that was because the coaches didn't make a concerted effort to get him involved, I don't really know, but he was a second-round pick just 3 years ago. I think Howie Roseman would have a hard time getting rid of somebody like that, to be honest with you. And maybe that game against the Jets where he had the 2 catches, 57 yards, had the nice touchdown catch, gives Howie the justification to say, hey, you know what, we're going to keep him. Look what he did against the Jets. I think he had a better camp than Travis Folgham. John Hightower, I think, could be ticketed for the practice squad. So right now I'm looking at 5 receivers. But, there have been some names that have been released here during these early cuts on Tuesday that maybe they're interested in. A guy like Geronimo Allison, who has a little bit of experience in this league. Big target. He's, 6-something.
From Green Bay.
Right. He went to the Lions in the offseason. The Lions cut him, but he played 4 years with Aaron Rodgers.
Yes.
So, Geronimo Allison's a guy that, might make a little sense. I saw the Browns release Kadarrell Hodge, who is a young player who I think has ability. He's a 6'2", 200-pound guy. I think if you're going to look for a receiver on the waiver wire, I think the Eagles would kind of look for a guy with some size, because, Smith, Rager, and Watkins. I mean, Watkins is 6 foot, but I'm talking about a good 6'2" to 6'4" type of receiver who could be a threat in the red zone. So if you're going to look for a guy, that's the kind of guy I would look for, and also maybe somebody with a little bit of experience in this league. Like, I know the Washington football team cut Antonio Gandy-Golden, who I really like, coming out of Liberty last year in the draft. The Washington team took him in the 4th round. But, he only had 1 catch last year. He's a little bit green, but he's great size, 6'4", 230. So, I think you're really going to see the Eagles look hard at the waiver wire if they're going to keep 6 receivers. But I think the 5 are going to be those 4 we mentioned, plus J.J. Arcega-Whiteside.
So the career arc for Travis Folgham is pretty interesting to me. Unheralded kid coming out of Old Dominion, not exactly a football factory. The Eagles get him. He shines early. And then when Alshon comes back to the roster, sort of just disappeared. And now, did not look very good in camp or in preseason. What happened there?
Yeah, it was interesting when Alshon came back healthy last year, and all of a sudden Folgham's parked on the bench, and Doug Peterson was asked about that. And he said, he has to keep working. His work ethic, I guess, was called into question a little bit. And maybe that is an issue with him. But listen, he had a hard time getting open in one-on-one wide receiver versus DB drills against the Patriots when the Patriots were in town. And that's a concern, because those drills are geared towards getting the receiver open. I mean, they're hard to cover one-on-one when everything favors the receiver. And Folgham struggled there. Now, maybe the Eagles keep him based on that terrific 5-game stretch he had last year. But, his work ethic might be an issue. I mean, I haven't seen him dog it or anything in practice. So if it is, it's something the coaches are seeing on tape. But, that 5-game stretch was pretty darn good. Over 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. And, if that is enough to have him earn a spot, we're going to see, because I think, he's probably the 6th guy on this roster if they go 6 receivers.
I think the same thing. But another battle right now is the interior defensive line. You got T.Y. McGill and Hassan Ridgeway. Both guys are veteran players, been in the league a while. And, both have shown, a skill set that kind of, are mirror each other in the aspect that one's good at this and the other one's good at that. T.Y. McGill's more explosive, get up the field, pass rushing, defensive tackle. Then you have Hassan Ridgeway, who's a guy that's going, anchor down, run, and stop the run. Which one of those guys would you keep? And, who do you see as the guys that are going to be the defensive tackles in the middle of this defense?
Yeah, well, I love T.Y. McGill, man. He's a 6-foot guy. And Barrett, you blocked against guys in the NFL. I mean, did you have a hard time with short guys like that? Because
they got leverage, man.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's strong. He had 3 sacks in the preseason, which led the team. He had 2 against the Jets and then 1 against the Steelers. 6 foot tall. I really like this guy. I mean, he played a little bit last year. Hassan Ridgeway, 6'3", a little bit taller, but Ridgeway's had a problem with injuries his first 2 years in Philadelphia. He's been shut down after playing just 7 games each year. But there's no questioning his talent. I like Ridgeway a lot as well. The Eagles already cut Raekwon Williams, who was an undrafted free agent from 2020, got a little time last year, but he's gone. There could be a situation where the Eagles might try to keep both these guys. But if I had to make the decision between the two, I'm biased because I like that shorter defensive lineman.
Root hog, huh?
Yeah, man. I love that. I love that bull rush that he has. I love that power that he brings. I would stay with T.Y. McGill.
Well, speaking of a guy who's had injury issues, big year this year for Derek Barnett, and he's injured again. Yep. They restructured his deal not too long ago. Josh Sweat, was waiting in the wings, perhaps. What do you think happens here with this? How big of a year is this for him? I mean, he's got to have double-digit sacks and stay on the field in order to be a part of the future.
Yeah, well, it's a big year for both these guys. Both are looking for new contracts.
Mm-hmm.
They're on the last year of their deal, and Sweat got hurt a little bit last year. There's that knee issue that he had coming out of in high school when he went to Florida State. Had some knee issues. He's 100% healthy. If you talk to him, of course, every player thinks he's 100%. But the knees seem to be sound with Josh Sweat. Quick off the ball, big guy. A lot of players think he's going to have a really breakout year. Barnett, on the other hand, he's had the shoulder injuries or the shoulder issues in the past. And here he is again, not practicing because of a shoulder injury, which he had against the New England Patriots when he hit a guy over the middle and did something to his shoulder. We haven't seen him since. So, again, he's got 10 days or so to get ready for the Falcons if he can answer the bell. But it is a big year for Barnett. He's a first-round pick.
Yeah.
He needs to set at least a career high in sacks, which I think is 6.5. He needs to go above that, well above that, I would think, to get that next contract in Philadelphia. Got a lot to prove. First round pick, whereas Sweat's a fourth rounder, has really done well. But that's going to be an interesting, battle within the battle, so to speak, between Sweat and Barnett on the edge. They're both going to play a lot if they're healthy, and it's going to be interesting to see who has the better season.
You're right, man. A battle that not even a battle because they let him go, but I really thought that Jason Huntley, running back, I think we got him from Detroit,
right,
was going to be the kick returner this year. He showed so much explosiveness. We sat down and watched him together, watched special teams, and he was the major guy on kickoff return, and they let him go. Who do you see taking that position, since he's going to be gone now?
Yeah, Huntley really didn't help himself when he hurt his ribs. I thought he showed some good stuff against the Steelers, but then he had this rib injury that really limited him, and I think that's a problem. I could see them trying to get him to the practice squad. I think there's a good chance he will get to the practice squad. But yeah, he was a fifth-round pick of the Lions. The Eagles got him last year, really never was used that much. But yeah, I liked him a lot too, was used in the kickoff duty, like you said, Barrett, but I don't know who's going to do that job. Realistically, how often do you see kickoff returns in the NFL now? Maybe one per game. Everybody kicks the ball out of bounds or over the end line, I should say, or into the end zone. But, I think Rager can handle it. I think we saw him do a little bit of it in the preseason. You have guys like Boston Scott might be able to do it. You have guys that you can put back there to return kicks. And again, it's probably only going to be one, maybe two a game. Although I'll say the way the Eagles special teams have looked, especially in kickoff coverage and kickoff return, if I'm the opposing team, I'm making them return it because I think I can hold them within the 25-yard line. And so
not a lot has been said about special teams either. And they've been a little – they have done nothing for me, at this point. It's become something that I needed to talk about, but I haven't talked about yet. But they're definitely not in a position where I'm used to them being at, especially in the beginning of the season.
Yeah, Barrett, you've been out to practices. They don't work a lot on special teams.
Right.
They don't spend a whole lot of practice time doing special teams. Of course, when you're only practicing, 75, 80 minutes, something has to get cut out. And I guess it was special teams. And you hope that, it gets a little better now that we're going to be defining some roles here as the 53-man roster takes shape. Michael Clay, the young special teams coordinator, you hope that now he knows who he's going to have available and he can begin to, teach these guys how to cover or return. But yeah, it's been a concern to me, especially that kickoff coverage. They're giving up yards to guys well beyond the 25-yard line, and they're not getting out beyond the 25-yard line when they're taking kickoffs. So yeah, that's a concern. So yeah, we'll see. Huntley, I think, will be back on the practice squad, and maybe he plays a role at some point this season. But right now, I would look for maybe Rager or Watkins or Scott to take back kicks.
Well, speaking of running backs, former Eagles running back Corey Clement apparently was just released not too long ago by the New York Giants. And that led me to a question about the running back rotation. There was, the touches for Miles Sanders being sort of dispersed elsewhere, at least during the preseason, some talk about that he's not going to be, necessarily the primary guy. How do you think this gets parsed out during the season?
Well, Kenny Gainwell is obviously a rookie that's going to make a big impact. In fact, if I had to name, all the rookies that are going to have an impact, Devontae Smith would be on that list.
Mm-hmm.
But I really think Gainwell is going to be there as well. Milton Williams, you could make a case for him, the defensive lineman, third-round pick. He could be in that mix. But, man, Kenny Gainwell, to me, really, we saw it against the Jets. That second drive the Eagles had, he accounted for 47 yards of their 78-yard drive. He had, I think it was 15 yards receiving, 32 yards rushing. He's a tough runner who always seems to be falling forward. Miles Sanders himself said he probably has the best hands of any running back in that room, which is huge for a Nick Sirianni offense. It's going to throw the ball to its backs. Sanders is going to be the guy, but listen, he hasn't had the best camp catching the football. Struggled with that last year, which is surprising because as a rookie, he had the 50 catch season, but his hands he's just struggled catching the ball. And if he can't, iron that out, then we could see more and more Gainwell as the season goes on. I'm not saying they're going to put Sanders on the bench, but, Gainwell is going to play a role. Sanders is obviously a home run hitter in the run game, but, he needs to really show that he can catch the ball consistently, if he wants to get the majority of these snaps. And then after that, Boston Scott, I like what I've always liked Boston Scott, real shifty. We saw that great move he made on his way to a 49-yard touchdown in New York.
Amazing.
Yeah. Listen, that guy, he's a strong guy, former state champion power lifter out of Louisiana in high school. He can play. I love the depth that this running back room has, from top to bottom with Miles, Gainwell, and Boston Scott, and it looks like Jordan Howard will probably make the team, probably the best blocker and pass protection, so he could be in there and obvious passing downs on third down to pick up anybody that's coming, up the middle or off the edge because he's good at it. But I like this running back room a lot. In fact, I think it's one of the strengths of this team after the O-line, D-line, and then I would put the running backs as, probably my third strongest group on this team.
One thing that I'm really concerned about, I probably shouldn't be because, none of the starters really played, like Fletch and those guys. But at the end of the day, they had a real problem with stopping the run. And it was consistently with the 3s and 4s, 2s, 3s, and 4s in all 3 preseason games. Now, I know I saw, when we were in camp, they go run a little double eagle or bear front, where they cover both centers and both guards in the center, and then, bring down Avery from the Sam to the defensive end position. That way they have 5 defensive linemen down. I think they'll stop the run, with those type of formations. But is there something that, we're missing as far as, our ability not to stop the run with, at any point during this preseason?
Yeah, I'm not sure how many calls they made, on the defensive side of the ball to kind of stop the run once it kind of snowballed away from them. But you're right, it's concerning. And this is a defense that has kind of prided itself on stopping the run on Schwartz. And now here we are 3 games in, every team is going over 100 yards rushing against them by a lot. But, again, I wouldn't read into it too much because you didn't see a lot of that first team defensive line. Ryan Kerrigan didn't play either in any of these preseason games. He's kind of the forgotten guy. Alex Singleton, who's terrific, at making tackles, he didn't play a whole lot. Sean Bradley and Rashad Smith were kind of your linebackers, and that's why I say, Bradley was kind of up and down, and you wonder if maybe they look to deal him. Rashad Smith's already been cut. But I wouldn't read a whole lot. And Eric Wilson, another guy who didn't play a whole lot at linebacker in the preseason.
Right.
But yeah, I wouldn't read a lot into it just from the personnel side of things, as well as the fact that I don't think they were calling many run blitzes or anything to kind of stem that bleeding once it started to snowball. It's a lot of cliches there, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, they didn't do a lot defensively from the head, from the Jonathan Gannon's point of view to stop the run with blitzes and various calls. So, I think those 2 factors, personnel and defensive play calling, kind of let me feel a little bit more comfortable with them stopping the run. I think they'll be able to do it. They've done it with the predominant, these all defensive linemen that they've had for years. So I think they'll be okay there in that area. But again, Barrett, something to watch, once they head to Atlanta and then they welcome San Francisco in for the home opener a week later.
Yeah, good luck with that one.
Yeah.
We got about 3 minutes left with Ed Kracz. I don't know if you get into predictions, but if I asked you to give me one to a record for the Eagles with the extra game, what do you think this team is?
Man, I haven't gone on record with the record,
Oh, okay. All right.
Listen, my answer is always, and maybe I'm getting a little closer to putting a number on this, but my thing is I just want to see them get to November and December playing better than they are in September and October, because that October, November, December schedule is really when you're playing the meat of your NFC East opponents. And if the division hasn't gotten away from them, or they're still in the mix, nobody's run away with it, and they're playing better and they're relatively healthy, then maybe they can make a run at winning the East. But again, that's going to take probably 10 wins. And if I had to put a number on it, I'd probably go under that. I just want to see if they can actually, under Nick Sirianni and this new young coaching staff, be playing better later in the season than they will be probably earlier in the season.
So much to learn this year. I mean,
yes.
we're every week is going to be like just a learning experience with the coaching staff. So much of the roster, Jalen Hurts. It's kind of interesting that way. Like you don't really often have this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
Do you like this coaching staff?
Yeah, I do. I do. I think they're enthusiastic. I think they're good teachers. Can they coach on game day, especially, Nick Sirianni? I don't know.
We don't know.
Again, like Harry said, we don't know. There's so many unknowns, but I like them. I think they're approachable. I think they're refreshingly honest for the most part. Whether it stays that way, we'll see.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious to see how they handle adversity, because this season's going to have some adversity, no doubt.
Yes.
And I'm curious to see how they keep that team together, how they keep them fighting week in and week out. Once some of these losses start to pile up, I want to see how they respond to that. And that's something we're not going to learn until we get rolling.
Yep. I got them at 7 and 10.
Okay.
That's kind of this 17 schedule too is weird to me. Like an odd number of games. It just seems bizarre. I'm thinking it's going to go to 18 at some point soon, right? Yeah,
I think it will, and they'll drop down to 2 preseason games, and
thank God
the schedule. Yeah. Right.
All right, Ed, we appreciate it, man. Look forward to the season. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, fellas. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate you, Ed.
Ed Kracz, SI.com, Eagles Maven. Follow him on Twitter at Kracz, KRACZE. And if you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.